I don't see KSI taking on Jake Paul in 2023. KSI vs Jake Paul is verbally agreed for them to fight in Wembley Stadium in 2023 with a winner-takes-all fight, as this fight has been an ongoing discussion to be made for several years, with them both calling each other out and wanting the fight since they started boxing back in 2018. With the new year rolling around, there have been countless reports saying that this will finally be the year that we see KSI get in the ring with Jake Paul. However, that's most likely not going to be the case. While I do believe that both of these guys do want the fight and are interested in making it happen for this year, it will be an extremely difficult process in terms of negotiations, politics, and timeline that would need everything to go perfectly from all parties for this fight to be made once and for all. Now, what do I mean by the politics for this fight? So in boxing, politics are something that we see very often that prevents fighters even at the highest level from making the fights that people want to see. And for example, we have seen this highlighted within the last year in boxing, with notable fights like Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Crawford, Tyson Fury versus either Anthony Joshua or Alexander Usyk, Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis, and many more high-profile fights not getting made. The reason that we haven't seen these fights up until this point is usually due to the fighters not being able to come to agreements on multiple aspects, being the promotion, where the fight is to be staged, who is A-side, what weight they fight at, who gets the higher purse split, and many more factors. With boxing not having simply one promotion that holds most of the highest level fighters like the UFC does, it makes it so fighters and promoters on different networks need to work together and come to agreements for certain things to take place. Misfits Boxing has come into the YouTube boxing scene and sort of negated this problem, staging events that are consistent and holding a roster of fighters that, while unlike the UFC are not contractually obligated to fight on the platform, they are still willing to, as Misfits is the only promotion really putting on consistent events with a big audience in the space. This is why most fights in the YouTube boxing scene are relatively easy to make, especially if both sides want the fight. This is in contrast to professional boxing, as fighters tend to be signed to a certain platform that typically fight in-house fighters. An example of this in pro boxing is Gervonta Davis, who has been highly criticized for only fighting fighters within the Mayweather Promotions banner for a while, as Floyd Mayweather himself has admitted that Tank would only be matched against PBC and Mayweather Promotion fighters while Tank was with them. Both KSI and Jake Paul are on two completely different sides of the fence, with Jake Paul being under the Showtime pay-per-view banner with his promotional company Most Valuable Promotions, and KSI being under the DAZN pay-per-view banner with his promotional company Misfits Boxing. Showtime and DAZN are two different platforms that are not usually on good terms to say the least, and have no record of working together. While we know KSI is looking to expand Misfits Boxing with fights on DAZN pay-per-view and is contractually obligated to fight on the platform, this may not be the same with Jake, as in the past his promoter, Steven Espinoza, has detailed that Jake Paul is a free agent in boxing and can fight under any promotion.
He's certainly going to fight again. It may be with Showtime and maybe with another platform. Look, we certainly want to continue doing business with him. There's a lot of suitors. He's got a lot of financial opportunities.
Oh, so he's not like contractually obligated?
Correct.
Okay, that's cool.
Now, this doesn't necessarily mean Jake would jump on board to fight on DAZN pay-per-view, as he has stayed loyal to Showtime for his last 3 fights, having 2 scheduled fights on Showtime even after Espinoza has came out and said he was a free agent, meaning it could be different now. That means one of the only ways Jake would really be able to fight KSI is if Jake's a free agent and goes to fight on DAZN, which is a best case scenario. But if Jake has signed a multi-fight deal with Showtime or still wants the fight to be under the Showtime banner, which history tells us he may, they may need to execute a cross-promotion deal similar to the likes of what Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Tank Davis seem to be setting up for an eventual mega fight. While Ryan Garcia fights on DAZN and Tank fights on Showtime, as reported by Mike Coppinger, they came to an agreement to make the fight a Showtime x DAZN pay-per-view, where the fight would be produced and distributed by Showtime, but would be offered as pay-per-view through DAZN as well. I don't see this happening with this fight, however, as KSI and Misfits would want the event to be produced and distributed by DAZN, meaning they would need to come to a different agreement or a cross-promotion probably wouldn't take place. By the way, if you guys are enjoying the content, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, as it helps out tremendously and it lets me know if you guys want to see more. But back on track, Most Valuable Promotions have recently come out and said that the fight between KSI and Jake would be a joint promotion between MVP and Misfits if the fight were to take place. They also said that both guys deserve it for different reasons, so it seems like this is a possibility. Either way though, it's good that Jake's side is at least willing and accepting that this would be a crossover between MVP and Misfits regardless of which distributor they go with. KSI and Jake Paul have both expressed how they want to fight 3 times in 2023. The planned timeline has KSI, who is already set to fight Dylan Dennis in January, and Jake set to make his return sometime in February against most likely Tommy Fury. After this, they would have one fight in between, with KSI likely fighting Joe Fournier, as they are already setting that up by putting Fournier on his undercard, and with Jake likely fighting Nate Diaz or some other pro boxer. Then KSI would end up fighting Jake Paul in the last quarter of 2023 if the plan goes correctly. The problem with this, however, is that the whole timeline would all need to go perfectly in order for this fight to happen, meaning neither guy loses any fight, no one has much time off or has any kind kind of injury, along with everything going right with the negotiations, and that they don't take a long time for everything to be put in place, which in itself is highly unlikely, as I mentioned earlier. KSI has also explained how he has really fallen in love with the journey and the process of becoming a boxer and getting good at the sport, and since he believes his fight against Jake Paul will be the end, he said that he declined to fight Jake in mid-2023.
I could fight Jake middle of next year if I wanted to. You know, I was definitely offered to. But I said nah because I'm enjoying this too much. If I don't know if that's kind of weird. I'm just, you know, I didn't expect to just be so obsessed with being able to just improve so much. I think I'm just on a level where I'm able to just keep going and keep going and keep going way further than I thought. Like,
while this seems to imply that KSI is already in negotiations to have a fight against Jake, it seems like the terms of the negotiations themselves might become a nightmare to deal with, as both fighters have to agree to all sorts of terms and conditions to get a fight made. It does seem like Jake is willing to fight under KSI's conditions, however, as he has claimed that he wants to fight KSI as soon as he can, and would let his ego down to let KSI be the A side for the fight, even though Jake has been the A side for all of his pro fights up until this point.
He talks about it all the time. I've said I'll fight you in London. I said you could be the A side. Whatever terms you want. Like, I don't give a fuck. I just want to knock you the hell out. And he just won't do it, and then is tweeting me for the past 2 years all the time.
The payment seems like it wouldn't be too much of an issue as well, as KSI and Jake Paul have verbally agreed to a winner-takes-all fight, meaning that things like the revenue split may actually not matter as much, with the purse seemingly being forfeited to the winner of the fight. Well, this has never really been done at this level, and it's unclear how it will get done, seeing as they both have expenses for their teams and training camps, as well as this being a big financial risk by taking this bet. However, there are more factors to consider, like the weight for this fight, as KSI has cut a lot of weight in the last year, and while in his last fight he weighed in at 180 pounds, he planned to move down to 170 pounds to fight Dylan Dennis, but since Dylan couldn't make that, he is now fighting at 177.5 pounds. This is compared to Jake fighting his last fight at 185 pounds, and that being his career lowest, as well as Jake being the naturally bigger guy and would probably not be able to get any under 175 pounds without being extremely drained. This means they are currently fighting at an almost 10-pound weight difference, and KSI would either need to agree to go up in weight, Jake would need to come to a decent amount down in weight, or the most likely scenario where they meet in the middle at around 180 pounds. This could lead to a rehydration clause being implemented, especially if the fight goes under KSI's terms, similar to the situations between both Jake Paul and Hasim Rahman Jr. or KSI versus Dylan Dennis, where KSI may want Jake to not rehydrate too much on the day of the fight, with Jake having a sizable advantage in that aspect. KSI himself has also recently discussed how the negotiations for this fight would make it difficult for them to set it up so quickly in 2023, meaning there is some doubt that this would actually go through.
Now my focus is just working on different goals, smaller goals until I reach the main goal, which is Jake Paul. And, you know, I'd love the fight to be next year, but obviously negotiations and talking back and forth can take long, as we've seen with several fights in the boxing scene. But yeah, that is definitely my goal, my main goal.
In the past, when setting up KSI versus Logan Paul 2, the rematch didn't happen until over a year later since the first one, which while it was a different situation and they switched from amateur to pro fights, it still shows that these fights don't get made as quickly or as easy as most people think, and there are even more hurdles to get through with this fight as KSI and Jake fight on different promotions now. These negotiations for a fight between Jake Paul and KSI are definitely going to take time, and these type of mega fights are not easy to make in the sport of boxing at all, as we've seen so many big fights be held up due to negotiations and politics. A fight of this magnitude would also most likely contain a rematch clause on both sides, as if Jake or KSI lost, it would be devastating for their careers and they would most likely want to get their own back in another fight, being another huge spectacle and an opportunity to generate a lot of hype, interest, and money for a rematch. This is the first time we're really seeing these politics implemented so heavily in a fight that is between YouTubers. However, it seemed inevitable when they all started to disperse into professional boxing and different promotions, as this has been a major problem in boxing for years. Regardless, it does seem like both guys are eager to get a fight against each other going soon, but it looks like 2023 is unfortunately too soon for this fight to happen. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on a fight between KSI and Jake Paul and whether you see them being able to make this fight in 2023. I personally don't believe so, but if you guys enjoyed the video or you enjoy my content, be sure to let me know by leaving a like and subscribing, as it helps out tremendously and it helps support the channel. But yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one.